Wow, this is indeed exciting. The Vigeland Sculpture Park is the result of, I'm not going to go into great detail because the viewer can go online and research it yourself. But the story goes that in 1919, the city of Oslo gave Gustav Vigeland a studio to work in and an apartment to live in exchange for his lifetime of work. And that lifetime of work is now here at the Vigeland Sculpture Park. We started at the gate, and now we're at the second section called the bridge. And these are predominantly bronzes. I'm going to discuss not so much the history of the Vigeland Sculpture Park and Vigeland himself, but my reaction as an artist, as a sculptor, to the pieces that we're viewing. Now, the medium of bronze affords the sculptor the luxury of compositions that are open, and this is exemplified here with the extended limbs of the figures, and over here another situation the same way. This can be achieved with stone, but it's much more dangerous in that the medium can break. But with bronze, the artist is able to do this. And I feel that an open composition in stone would be almost a waste of the material. You can imagine this particular piece here, where carved in stone, all the negative space that had to be carved away between the male figure's legs and between the male's right knee and the female's left hip, and all the space between her arms. You'll notice when we get further in that Gustav Vigeland changes his compositional style with his figures when he moves on to granite. This is another example here. Can you imagine trying to execute that in marble or granite? Balancing the whole figure on one ankle. Now we are in a section of the park called the Fountain. We've come from the bridge over there. But I'm definitely seeing an influence of Rodin. Rodin's The Three Fates on the Gates of Hell, and the figures that are holding up the giant granite bowl from which the water from the fountain begins and tumbles over into the pond below. Those figures in the trees are definitely bronze. And there's relief sculptures on the wall, and then they're just below the trees, and then there's a lovely moat around the outside. So the composition of this section is very symmetrical. Vigeland's theme for the whole park is the human condition from birth through life until death. And so he's expressed as many emotions as he can in as many stages of life as he can within all of the sculptures. And this is the clan, which is off to the north of the main axis of the rest of the park. But it's Vigeland's second largest composition in the park. Two male figures are protecting the clan, which is on the inside. And there's everything from a young infant through teenagers, young adulthood, and then an old couple in the middle. And in celebration of FIFA, the World Soccer Championship, someone has added a soccer ball to the crotch of that teenage figure just to the right of center. Vigeland was not only responsible for the creation of the sculptures, but he also created all the landscaping, the location of the plazas, the ponds, the fountains, the pathways, the trees. And we've arrived now at the mother lode, for me, as a stone sculptor, is the monolith plateau. These sculptures are entirely executed in granite. And as an artist who started my sculpting career cutting my teeth on granite. I'm thinking back to 1980, the summer of 1980, when I assisted Vancouver artist George Pratt on two of his monumental granite projects, the Terry Fox Memorial and the Alaskan Territorial Guard Memorial. I learned how to carve granite first, and so for me to come here and see these monumental figurative granite sculptures that Vigeland created is quite exciting, I have to say. Now, we discussed before the open composition. You can see now with the granite sculptures, a lot of the compositions are closed. The limbs are not extended outwards. They are tucked in, they're wrapped around other figures. We've got all age groups depicted in figurative. Males, females, old, young, children, elders. And all of these sort of sculpture groups are arranged in a circle around the huge monolith, which is in the center. Look at these groups. There's a group of young girls up there all in the huddle, and there's another group of girls all on their knees laughing and looking out at life. But up here in the center is the 45-foot tall single block of granite, and there's over 400 figures, all writhing, twisting, hugging each other as they go from the base up to the top. This is absolutely beautiful. The human figure in the nude depicted in a beautiful way. And what I find also interesting is that there's all kinds of age groups that are here viewing the park, children and adults alike. Nobody is giggling over the nudes. One thing I have noticed with Vigeland's compositions is his proportions. His figures seem to have a little bit heavier thighs, a little bit shorter legs. But they are absolutely gorgeous. This particular composition is interesting. Two males seem to be wrestling, and the negative space that's been created between them. I marvel at how one got their chisel inside there. I am a direct carver, which means I have carved directly into a block of stone each time I've created a sculpture. I have not made a maquette out of a malleable material and then copied it into stone. What Vigeland did was create all these pieces first by drawing on paper and then sculpting the figures out of clay, and he had many assistants help him do that. And they then cast the clay into plaster, and then stone sculptors were hired to carve the sculptures. There's way too many sculptures for Vigeland to have copied or carved all of these himself, but that's how most stone sculptors have worked through history, and I'm just learning that process now. Creating a sculpture in a malleable material, making all the mistakes that need to be made, and then transferring the idea to stone. So here we come to the final section of the park called the Circle of Life. We've been slowly ascending in altitude up above, or up from the main gate, and we now come to the high point of the park and this final bronze sculpture called the Circle of Life, and it's sort of a culmination of all the stories being told throughout the park so far with all the figures. This is a very sort of simple composition that depicts human life from infancy to death, to old age, and finally death. And it circles back around, never ending. One thing I've been considering as we walk around Vigeland Park this afternoon is creative process. For the last 38 years, I, as a self-represented artist, have divided my time between creativity and the marketing and sale of those created artworks. What would it be like if, like Vigeland, I was tapped on the shoulder by a single patron and they said, you don't have to worry anymore about the necessities of life, putting a roof over your family's head, putting food on the table. That would all be looked after. All I had to do was create. Would my creative process change? And if so, how would it change? Food for thought.